we started reaching out to parents continuously. Of course, I told you we started in 2013, and 2014 DELI was formed. In 2015, we continued reaching out to parents. We had already formed Deaf Children Parental Care Initiative, DCPC, and they couldn't continue. But as of 2015, the sign language class continued, the DCPC meetings continued, and we continued to write letters to schools in different states. But particularly, we got the funding to conduct the free medical services that we did in the School for the Deaf Orodo. Before we knew it, it was 2016. 2016 came in a different mood and with a different approach, with a different energy and synergy. And we pounced on all of it, and we decided to use all of the resources that we had, both from my new community in the United States and the existing community in Nigeria. One thing that we did, 2016, I made every effort to seek funding to do community project in the School for the Deaf Ofekata Orodo. Remember that this project was born out of my first earlier encounter with the deaf students in the School for the Deaf Ofekata Orodo. And one thing that stood out was that when I had this encounter with these students, there was no electricity in their school. So that really stuck with me, that there was no electricity in the school. It also stuck with me that because of that, people from the community used to come to vandalize the school, the students, and everything. So I couldn't imagine it, and that was the beginning of DELI, and that was the beginning of my study. It was in my heart to find a way to tackle that problem of no electricity, even though they reported it had been a very long time, to the point that they were almost used to it. But thank goodness, thank God for the provision of funding. We had some good funding in 2016, and the first thing was to put electricity in that school, and also to make water available in the school, because when I continued to visit the school, I found out that the students used to go out to fetch water, and it doesn't matter whether they were in the middle of the school activities, they would go out to fetch water, and they would hide water in very unpleasant and unhygienic places. So these, were very burdensome in my heart. We got the funding from the Tree of Life. Thank you, Dr. Cousins of the Tree of Life, for the support you get through PEP. Dr. Arnold, I appreciate you for the effort you put in to see to the success of that funding. So the first thing we did, we first of all bought solar bulbs and solar lights and installed in the school. Chibike, once again, thank you for doing that. You single-handedly installed the solar lights in the school. It was like, wow, here comes the light. And but unfortunately, for whatever reason, the lights were not doing well. In the night, they wouldn't come up. And so over the few months, we found out that the effort and the money was not really worth it, because the solar lights never worked. That continued to be a burden to me. And so what we did was fortunately, it wasn't long that we heard that they had repaired or replaced the transformer that is near to the school. We used that opportunity to rewire the school and make sure that there was light, and connected light from the newly installed transformer. And there was light. There was real light in 2016. So the school was elite, and the school was happy. And so to go further, because we had some good funding in making sure that life was a little bit easier for the students, we put pipe-borne water, as we call it in Nigeria. We make sure that there was water. We put several taps in their kitchen, in the office area, in the men's school. So there was several taps that had water, so the students didn't have to go out to fetch water anymore. We managed to get somebody from the Ministry of Education, representing the Commissioner for Education then, who came to launch the electricity and the water that we put in the school. It was a huge event. Thank you, Pastor Emmanuel Itua of First Love Assembly, for gracing the occasion, for also being the spiritual father of the day. The men of First Love Assembly, a lot of you guys, Brother Vic James, Elder Mba, a lot of you people that came. I appreciate you really good for really coming to that occasion. I know it was huge. The students also, in their usual way, entertained us, and we had a wonderful program. The press was there, and they carried the news.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm standing on the existing protocol. Ma, I have looked at you. I have seen a mother, and we are going to commission the projects. But what I want to say is, if you do not go around this school to see what we have, what we had the misfortune of seeing today, if you don't go around.
So that we don't waste time.
Yes.
I have intention, because he said something about their hostel. We'll do the picture. Good. For the Honorable Commissioner, right?
Thank you very much.
When we were done with that, we had already obtained approval from the SEMB and UBEB. I think, yeah, we had already obtained approval from UBEB, Abuja, and possibly SEM to have our program at the School for the Deaf, Special School for the Deaf, Kuje, and the Junior Secondary School, Pasali. We were to have a community engagement program through free medical services in this school. And before we went to Abuja, we had, in addition to the water that we put in the School for the Deaf, Ofekata Orodo, we had also conducted another free medical service, this time around screening the eyes. We had a free medical service where the eyes of the students were screened, and there we are giving glasses. The glasses that we bought, we had a surplus of it, so we also carried it to Abuja. So in 2016, I flew in with Anne Swanson. Anne Swanson was a retired teacher at the School for the Deaf, New Mexico. And so she came with me to Nigeria. She heard about my work. When the New Mexico community heard about me when I arrived, it wasn't long, the news was all over around the small community because of the work I was intending to do. So I flew in with Anne Swanson, and we had a 9-day program in Abuja, and it was awesome. It was so awesome. So 2016 was like, what? The deaf community, especially the schools for the deaf, having worked in Owerri, coming to Abuja, it was something else. So in that program that we had for 9 good days, we had the support of First Love Assembly again, donating a vehicle that we drove around. We had Dr. Mary Edward fly in, who was solely in charge of sign language documentation, while other things happened behind that. So the team of medical professionals led by Onyeka Onomara was ready, and we had a good number of passionate people who wanted to really work. We were lodged, and we had a very wonderful family relationship through those 9 days. Every day we would go out, and in the evening we will get back to the hotel, and we will have an appraisal and documentation. In the morning we would have a brief devotion, and we go out. So each day was different. in the things we did, because when you are in that community, there's a way things go. It looks like you keep finding out, uncovering things by the stories that you hear from the teachers, from the students, the parents that were part of the program, and from the things you observed by yourself, that you know that these things are not right. Okay, so it was a huge discovery moment for us too. A lot of things that we saw that were not going well in the school, but anyway, we came to solve a particular problem, and we thought that the problem that we came to solve is really nothing compared to how much problem the school was facing. And we also had a problem of how to report the things we saw or we observed in the school, because we were a little bit careful to not report things that would look bad for the school. But anyway, eventually it happened later on. So 2016, we found Nelson. We brought him into the team, and we began to support him. I want to appreciate you, Uche Tini, our #1 sign language interpreter for that program. You did awesomely well. You were awesome. I want to thank you so much for the work you did. I want to thank the medical team, all of you, Nkiru, Angela, Ugochukwu. I want to thank our craft person, Olga. Thank you so much for the work you put in. The team members and even board members that attended the program, Barrister Didi, Mr. Nadis, thank you so much. Thank you all for all you did. It was an awesome program because of you guys. I will not fail to thank Anne Swanson, whose name became Amarachi Wannono. And she so much liked her name. Mary Edward, you are awesome. You are awesome. Amaka, that's where you are. So at the top of our head, the challenge we were facing was how to connect this problem and how to provide solution to it. How could we improve communication between deaf students, deaf children, deaf population, and the immediate communities, immediate families, siblings who were not deaf? So as linguists, we decided to study the sign language system that they were using. That was what led to our documenting the sign language systems in Nigeria. 2016 became a very large-scale documentation we did, courtesy of Dr. Mary Edward. From 2016, 2017, we started analyzing the sign language data we collected. We did some comparative study with American Sign Language used in America. We got some deaf students from the University of Rochester, courtesy of Queenette Okwaraji, who was one of our volunteers when she got to school. So we started analyzing these. We did some comparative study. And after our program in Abuja, Lagos, the intervention we were doing was heard everywhere. And we had this wonderful volunteer from the Jehovah's Witnesses Kindness Okoro, and who is now Kindness Olalongo. She came into the system and her presence changed everything. Like, she brought a huge amount of sign language interpreters. She brought, vibrancy. She brought beautiful set of way of doing things. So Abuja was so loaded for us, and we had these beautiful people that wanted to work. So we are collecting data here and there. We are collecting deaf demography. We are collecting sign language study. One thing that stood out for us is that from the day one we started as official corporation, we started seeking to be known in the deaf community, locally and internationally. Locally, we were seeking to be identified with the Nigerian deaf community. So we started writing them. We were seeking to identify with the Association of Sign Language Interpreters. We started writing them. But unfortunately, we didn't receive any friendly welcome by any of these two organizations. By our own analysis, I don't know, they felt a little bit of intimidated or something, I don't know. We were coming from outside. I was not a signer. I am not a sign language interpreter. I am a researcher. I'm a linguist, okay, and who turned sign linguist. So, and it wasn't a very popular terminology, a very popular position in this world, in the world of the deaf in Nigeria. So it was like, where is this guy coming from? But one thing that beat everything is that every time I would sit down to talk about sign language, everybody would be wowed. Where is he getting all of this information? Okay. But it's unfortunate that they didn't give me a chance. Okay. But we fought and were able to get some kind of formal collaboration in 2019 with the deaf community. And we seem to, by then, have had a cordial relationship with the Association of Sign Language Interpreters, who was being headed by Timothy Thinat. So it was a short-lived relationship with both the deaf and the sign language, bodies. And but we enjoyed it anyway, because at least we were able to make our intentions known. We were able to have some gatherings that we put across the message we had, to tell them that we're not coming to hijack anybody's anything, not your language, not your style of whatever. We were just trying to introduce a better way of doing things in the sign language world, being that we have some kind of different training than what they had. Right. So we also happen to be associated with Gallaudet University, being that one of us, Uche Ibe, was a Mandela Fellow, and he served at Gallaudet University. So he was our ambassador, and we had all of these meetings. Amanda Muller was the contact person for Gallaudet University, who was dealing with us until the relationship was no longer that palatable. So it's been quite a journey, and so in 2017, all the way, Abuja was booming. We had Kindness working. We had a whole lot of people blessing. We had John. We had another Kindness, and some deaf people. We had our brother Shala. All of these people joined as DELI. So we were getting volunteers by the day. It was so massive. And so we had the Anuma family joined, and they were living in Kaduna. So through the Anuma family, because at this time, we now had a very big desire to see what a local sign language looks like. Okay, because we had collected massive amount of videos on the sign language variety that is taught in school. So we had started analyzing them every day. I kept watching and re-watching these videos to understand the dynamics in comparison with what is being used in the United States. We started writing blog articles and different kinds of articles, going to conferences, attending international and local conferences, just to put out a message that there is something different that should be done from the way it is being done in the deaf community. People started listening to us. At least the idea of early access to sign language started sinking. Early literacy, people started using these phrases and are still using them now. We introduced all these phrases in Nigerian deaf community, campaigning against language deprivation. So in 2018, God helped us through the Anuma family. We got approval to go to Kaduna, where we had a local deaf community ready and willing to welcome us.
Somebody did, we go brighten up my day. He go take away my sins and my shame. I don't see your face, it is shine of love and grace. Oh my Lord, today you don't.
So, what would you say briefly? Being in Kaduna this morning.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we arrived safely, and I'm also glad that our hosts, the team members in Kaduna, they've come to welcome us. The journey was smooth, and I was a little bit surprised that we were still in the town.
Yeah. Okay, were you expecting it to be in a village?
Yeah, I thought we were going to one village, you know.
Okay.
But it's cool anyway.
Okay, so what was your projection for the coming week and work ahead?
Man, there's going to be work here. There's going to be a lot of work here. So, beginning from this evening, we're going to do orientation, whereby the deaf community will welcome us, and we have a speech by one of the deaf men. We also invited the director for rehabilitation board. He is going to send one of his staff to come across the week, and during the week we're going to be working from 8 o'clock till around 6 o'clock. I am so fascinated to see the varieties of sign languages that we are going to be recording, and I bet you got a lot of work to do.
Okay, wish you the best.
So 2018 came, the likes of Aniefon Aban came joining us from University of Uyo. So we had this expanded body of volunteers, having linguists, Vivian from Lagos, Uche Chopara, heading our Beauty Beyond speech program. So about 13 of us gathered from all across Nigeria, the United States, and Ghana. Mary Edward has been a very wonderful person, very wonderful instrument in this movement. And I can't thank Mary Edward enough. Dr. Mary, you have been so fabulous. You've been a blessing. I met Dr. Edward as a student. She was a master's student in the university in Norway, and we met in Cote d'Ivoire at a conference. And it wasn't one of the best conferences that we had attended. But eventually, meeting Mary Edward was one of the most beautiful things that has happened to this intervention. Not too long after we had met, we had to go to Abuja, and Mary Edward said, "I am in." So she came down from Ghana, and we were in Abuja together. So School for the Deaf Kuje Abuja event was a very powerful one. We screened the students for sexually transmitted disease. The results we had wasn't as terrible or as bad as the results from the School for the Deaf of Ekata Orodo. But eventually the eye problem rate was just about the same as we found out in the School for the Deaf of Ekata Orodo. So eventually, before we went to Abuja, we had done the same program, screening for eye problems in Orodo. And we had given out eyeglasses to students and their teachers. So we had so many more glasses remaining when we were going to the school for the deaf, Kuje, Abuja. Eventually, there were lots of eye problems too. The students were given glasses after screening. Parents too, teachers received as well. And that was where we found Nelson. Nelson Igele, who was gifted in designing buildings with paper, doing very beautiful works. Behind the principal of the junior secondary school for the deaf, Pasali, we saw this gorgeous building sitting, and we inquired, man, who made this? And she said it was one of the ex-students. By then, Nelson had left school. He had finished JS3, and the story became a little bit complicated, but we had to dig and dig. Eventually, we brought Nelson to the school. We saw this young boy, handsome, and eventually he was one that made the building. He came back with other buildings, came with a father, and that was how Nelson's story began. There were some other students we also discovered. We discovered Sarah, who was a very good artist, and the other student that I can't remember his name, who was a good shoemaker. He was making shoes in school. So first of all, we supported these students with some little money, and Nelson, we picked up on him and started by, and Swanson gave him some money to go do some medical checkups, because there was a story of he being very ill at that time, and the illness prevented him from continuing school. So we picked him up. So we started monitoring Nelson, sponsored his senior secondary school certificate examination, sponsored his university matriculation examination. But the first thing we decided to do was to tell a story about these deaf students so that the world could hear and possibly sponsor them. But the response was not as we expected, but we kept on pushing. We kept on telling their story. We published them in our yearly magazines. But anyway, we started raising small funds to support them. And we decided to, since we didn't get as much fund as we expected, we picked on Nelson, ensured that he was tutored, arranged for private tutor. One of the volunteers by name Courage. Thank you, Courage, for doing that. He undertook the project of teaching Nelson, and then that was how eventually along the line there was an opening at the Enugu State University of Science and Technology, and Nelson was admitted to do his dream course, architecture. I'm not sure of any other profoundly deaf person in Nigeria who is a professional in the area that Nelson is studying currently. If our statistics or if our findings are right, Nelson might be, when he graduates in the next few months, he might be the first profoundly deaf person to be an architect. Nelson became deaf as a child. In some of our articles, I know you know that we've written a whole lot about deaf people, how deafness occurs and all that. Nelson is one of those we consider the vulnerable and amongst the vulnerable. Okay, so, but today I can tell you he's doing well. So this is about 10 years now, almost 10 years now, and we are still kicking, evolving, metamorphosing. A whole lot has happened, and we have learned a whole lot. And we are happy to identify with the deaf community in Africa and in the whole world. But much more importantly, we are happy to be leading the study for the promotion of indigenous sign languages. We're happy to be leading the study of indigenous sign languages in Africa, not just in Nigeria.
my pleasure to thank the Commissioner and the Ministry of Education and is it Science Technology now? All right. For making sure that they are here today.